Hey there, gorgeous, and welcome to my beauty salon, Shine Bright, where I'm going to give you a jaw-dropping makeover. I'll even help you pick up your jaw. I want you to have the best experience here, so I've prepared a catalog for you to keep you entertained while I work my magic. It has some information about the craziest and creepiest beauty trends throughout history. And trust me, these are going to make you grateful that you live in these modern times. I'm sure you're already using a bunch of creams and serums at home to help you achieve flawless skin. There are so many different brands and types of products out there that it's even hard to choose one. Well, women in ancient Rome, however, didn't have that many options. Instead, what they used was sweat. And to add to the grossness of it all, it was not their own. Back in those days, gladiators were viewed to be symbols of fierce power who dazzled Roman ladies. So their sweat would be scraped from their bodies using a special metal tool called a strigil and sold inside small pots outside the arena. Some bought it as souvenirs. Some would wear it as perfume, and others would apply it as a form of face cream to smoothen the appearance of their skin. However, one important thing to be mentioned here is the fact that most of the time, this unusual ingredient was available to wealthy or aristocratic women because of how expensive they were. Wearing any type of makeup was thought to be an indication of belonging to the lower class and was deemed dishonorable. So, applying sweat to their face was one of the few ways wealthy women thought would enhance their natural beauty. But wait! Ancient Rome had even more freaky trends. As if sweat was not disgusting enough, another beauty ritual of Roman ladies included leeches. They would ferment them in vinegar for several months and apply this potion to their hair to dye it. Funny thing is, this actually worked. It would help them achieve a darker color. Now, they don't say the eyes are the windows to the soul for nothing. The eye area also had its share of bizarre beauty trends throughout history. Take ancient Greek ladies, for example. They were rocking the unibrow look long before Frida Kahlo. You see, ancient Greece was a tough place to live if you didn't have an appearance that fulfilled the beauty standards of the time. Ancient Greeks believed that physical beauty was directly correlated to internal beauty. So, if they thought a person was good-looking, they considered them to be morally good too. But those who were deemed to be ugly ducklings were viewed as lacking character and manners. Then came the famous mathematician Pythagoras, who developed the golden ratio formula. It stated that balance and symmetry were linked to beauty in everything. Accordingly, symmetrical faces were considered the most beautiful, and that is how the unibrow became a thing. If someone's eyebrows were joined in the middle, this made their face look more symmetrical, therefore more beautiful. In time, one long brow turned into a symbol of intelligence and purity as well, and those who were not so lucky to be born with it would use dyed goat hair to close the gap in between. Yeah, I don't get it either. Speaking of gaps, let's make a time jump, shall we? The draw hair if necessary approach to the ancient Greek beauty standards transitioned into the let's get rid of all the face hair trend by the end of the Middle Ages and during the Renaissance. Throughout history, hairstyles have often been indicators of socioeconomic status or even marriage. This was no different during the Middle Ages. For example, while young girls would wear their hair loose and long, married women would keep their hair somehow hidden by wearing a veil or a hood. However, in addition to the regular hairstyle expectations of society, ladies would also remove their eyebrows and pluck their hairlines all the way back to achieve a large and prominent forehead. They would even pluck all their eyelashes to look as stylish as possible. They believed that this practice would make them resemble the head of a baby, therefore helping them appear more pure and innocent. It supposedly made them seem more intelligent, and from the upper class as well. Yet again, those who already belonged to the upper class and had wealth also followed the trend. Even Queen Elizabeth I would tweeze her own eyebrows to give herself an elongated forehead. But that's not it yet. Renaissance was full of crazy beauty trends. Again, during the Elizabethan era, sugar had been recently discovered, and it could only be imported from other territories. Since it was still new and interesting, People would use it for everything you can imagine, from dressing vegetables to making medicinal mixtures. Yet it was also extremely expensive. That's why you would have to be super wealthy to have access to it. And ironically enough, the rich who had the means to add sugar to their diet were unaware of what it can do to your teeth. As a result of this, if someone was wealthier, their teeth were more rotten. This led to the trend of women blackening their teeth on purpose to give the impression that they could afford sugar. Well, that's going a bit far. Again, Queen Elizabeth I was one of the most famous sugar consumers, and having a never-ending sugar supply didn't help either. They say her teeth were so black and so decayed because of this that people couldn't understand her speech. Nevertheless, since it's the Queen we're talking about, everything she did was still seen as fashionable and was copied by all. If only she brushed her teeth too. Not everyone in Europe was so fond of their decaying teeth, though. One 17th century French aristocrat wanted to maintain her shiny smile and her ability to have a meaningful chat with people. However, she took extreme measures for it, which had devastating consequences for her in return. The thing is, the ancient Greek belief of the more beautiful you were on the outside, the more healthy and virtuous you were on the inside, was still valid during this time. Unfortunately, she was already seen as a controversial woman who did not have a good reputation because of her many marriages. So she desperately needed to do something to keep her teeth in place and to protect what was left of her social rank in front of her frenemies. The thing she was suffering from was something called periodontal disease, which was the result of poor dental hygiene. It inflames the gums and bones surrounding the teeth, and in some cases leads them to loosen and even fall out. Her traumatic and stressful past also caused her to grind her teeth, which didn't help either. She even had a tooth replaced with an artificial one grafted from ivory at an unknown point in her life. Then, when her condition got way worse, she wound gold wire around her false tooth and its neighbors. Over the years, she had to tighten it constantly to stabilize everything, but this practice actually further weakened the surrounding teeth. Now that you know this, I bet you'll appreciate your dentist and the invention of metal braces more. The questionable beauty trends of history were not limited to the face area. Nowadays, we do exercise and follow special diets to maintain a healthy figure. Ladies of the Victorian era also had the same goal. The only thing is, they used a very unconventional method to achieve it. To have an ideal waistline, the most famous diet of the time included swallowing pills that contained tapeworm eggs. The idea behind it was that these eggs would hatch and the parasite would start growing inside the body. To feed themselves and survive, they would then start ingesting parts of whatever the host was consuming. Hence, ladies could eat whatever they wanted without worrying about calorie intake while losing weight at the same time. What's even scarier than this diet itself is the fact that some people still try this method today, which only shows that the saying, "beauty is pain," needs an update. Hey, you honestly want to look more attractive? Smile more. It's the best facelift. Speaking of makeup, and I'm about to, did you know that ancient Romans used toxic chemicals in their makeup, even though they were aware that they were super dangerous? Well, here are crazy beauty rituals and trends from ancient times to our days. Beauty came at a price back then. Romans used poisonous ingredients along with healthy and organic cosmetics. And yes, from the very beginning, they were aware that these chemicals weren't harmless. Here are 3 substances they used for the sake of beauty. The first one was cinnabar. It was a dangerous mix of chemicals. This substance contained red mercuric sulfide and red lead. Women applied cinnabar as a blush. Luckily, women in ancient Greece had organic alternatives to this monstrosity, such as rose petals. But would you be surprised to hear that mercury poisoning still exists today, caused by some skincare goods? The second sinister ingredient they added to their makeup routine was coal. It's a poisonous substance with multiple risks. For instance, it can cause abdominal cramps. Yet it was among the most popular beauty products back then and was used all over the place, from the Middle East to Africa. When picturing Cleopatra, you probably imagine her with dramatic eye makeup. It's believed she applied kohl eyeliner. Yet kohl differs from other types of cosmetics because it wasn't used just for the sake of beauty. Ancient Egyptians believed that it had spiritual and medicinal benefits. They were sure that this black substance protected their eyes from the sun. Plus, it was a shout-out to the Egyptian deity Horus and his falcon eyes, as well as the protection from evil spirits and the rage of other deities, such as Ra, who, by the way, was the god of cheerleaders. You know, rah-rah. Anyways, nowadays, most of the world has stopped using kohl as an eyeliner, though in some parts of the world, such as India, people still use it. I'll mention whitening supplies more than once in this video because people from various civilizations and different eras wanted to achieve that chalk-white look of their skin. Romans used a substance called cerussa, which means sugar of lead in Latin. Upper-class people wanted to make their faces look lighter, but although some Romans choose to use this dangerous whitening agent, others opted for another way, chalk dust, surely a much safer alternative. Lead is an extremely poisonous substance. It can cause skin ruptures and even worse consequences, but Romans allowed it to make its way into their cosmetic procedures. It was also used as a hair dye. It didn't stop there. Scholars believe that lead-lined cooking utilities cause poisoning in the long term, which could have helped bring the fall of the empire. Moving on. From the 15th to the 18th centuries, the skin of the whitest shade was the coolest look you could get. So people applied a combo of white lead and vinegar on their faces. This mixture made their skin peel off. They then applied lead sulfate to apparently remove freckles. In the long term, this routine resulted in irreversible damage. The skin would get all sorts of problems, so people would use other products to cover these imperfections up. But you know how skin health works. Once you try to hide something, you only make the situation worse. And once you start, you can't stop. By the way, if you had lived in ancient Greece, you couldn't have left your eyebrows as they were. A unibrow was part of the desired beauty standard. Frida Kahlo would have been even more iconic back then. People with unibrows were considered to be pure and intelligent. Women who didn't have a unibrow dyed goat hair and used it to connect their brows. Now that you're into hearing more about beauty standards of the past, we can carry on with some practices from Asia. Let's start with China's foot binding custom. There, the beauty package included having small feet, unnaturally small feet. This fashion lasted for centuries, from around the 13th century to the 20th. The authorities officially banned this practice in 1912. So, what was this custom about? Well, there was a saying that the most desirable bride possessed a 3-inch foot. Wow! This saying was so powerful that young women had to bind their feet from a very early age. Foot binding was a painful and hard procedure that affected women. With such tight bandages, their bones didn't grow naturally and properly. A grown-up person's feet would be very small and different from what they were supposed to be. Now, let's move from feet to hands. Fashion was used as an opportunity to show off your social status. Aristocrats had nails reaching up to 10 inches. As you can imagine, you can't do anything with such long nails, not even hold a spoon or brush your hair. That's why they had servants to help them with daily tasks. Plus, they wore special nail accessories. They looked like nail cages that were supposed to protect their nails from accidents. These nail guards were made of gold, so they could also show how privileged their owners were. Teleporting over to Japan, to that time when black teeth were popular. The practice of making your teeth black is called oaguro. It was the symbol of maturity and beauty. The teeth blackening solution contained iron filings, vinegar, tea, and some other ingredients. This mixture didn't cause permanent staining or damage to the teeth, but it's said to have smelled pretty bad. If you had accentuated veins in pre-revolution France, you were the center of attention. Blue veins were considered a sign of nobility and symbolized privileges. Back then, women used blue pencils to color the outlines of their veins, for instance, on their hands. Now, Queen Elizabeth I was probably the trendsetter for painting her face to make it look white and ghost-like. As I mentioned before, people used to douse their faces in white makeup in different eras. But those who lived in the 19th century took it a step further with arsenic wafers. Yes, arsenic indeed eliminates the red blood cells in the body. As a result, you get whiter skin. But the perfect pale skin came at a heavy price. People could also experience internal bleeding, hair loss, blindness, and other consequences. Similarly, the tuberculosis look was famous among Victorians. This disease resulted in red lips, thin waists, and pale skin. Romanticizing it. I know, disturbing. Now there's a poisonous plant called belladonna. That means beautiful woman. Women used it to dilate their pupils so that their eyes looked darker and more expressive. That's where the name of the plant came from. Wide foreheads were admired in the Middle Ages. People were plucking their eyelashes and eyebrows. They also plucked the hairline to make it retreat further to the back of their heads. They believed that when they had a high forehead, they resembled a baby. And since babies were innocent and pure, they would look this way too. Wow, I hope they didn't mimic the other baby habits too. The next one didn't serve a cosmetic purpose at all. Marie Curie discovered radiation in 1898. Her invention changed so many things in the medical world. Cosmetics manufacturers wanted to benefit from this discovery. That's why companies started to use radiation in their products. They just jumped into it before analyzing the effects it could cause. In the 1920s and 30s, some companies advertised radioactive creams, soaps, and beauty products. I know it's hard to believe. Their go-to sentences involve phrases like revitalizes the skin and luminous energy. Yeah, and how about that healthy glow? Now, some honorable mentions. Fake eyelashes were once sewn into the eyelids. Corsets in the 18th and 19th centuries were so tight that they changed women's skeletons. These trends look weird and cruel to us, but don't underestimate the power of customs, traditions, and perception. Maybe 100 years from now, they'll look back at us and say the same thing about 21st century beauty practices. Do you get your share of this craziness, or do you want to hear more about creepy beauty trends from the past? Leave us a comment.
Remember when you were little and you used to think fairy tales were real? I have some news that is about to make your inner child very happy. A little birdie told me that the couple that might have inspired the Beauty and the Beast was real. The only thing we need to find out is if the movie was really based on their story or not. How about you be our guest as we dive deeper into the origins of this beloved Disney movie? The year is 1537, and our story begins in the sunny center of Europe, the Canary Islands. The Canaries are home to outstanding natural attractions, and Canarios, the people who are born there, live their daily lives in the archipelago's pleasant climate. That year, a certain gentleman was born on the Canaries, and his destiny would be different from those of his fellow islanders. Meet Pedro Gonçalves. Pedro was born into a typical family, with a very rare congenital condition called hypertrichosis. If you've never heard of this before, hypertrichosis is a condition that can make someone look like a real-life werewolf, minus the howling part. It allows for hair to sprout excessively in places where hair wouldn't normally sprout. If in 2023 we still aren't sure of the causes of this disease, imagine people all the way back in the 1500s. Dermatologist Sarah Taylor says that throughout history, there have only been 50 documented cases of this condition. This is how rare Pedro's case was. The thing is, the excess facial hair made people look at Pedro differently. Records say he was called a wild man and was highly mistreated when he was a youngster. 10 years later, Pedro was put on a ship and sent to France as a gift to King Henry II. The king was about to be crowned, and it was normal for people to shower him with all kinds of presents. Little Pedro disembarked in the French city of Fontainebleau, where he moved into the king's castle. The entire court took interest in the boy as soon as he arrived. The castle's academics and doctors asked to study him closely, hoping to figure out if he was really a wild man. Soon enough, they understood that Pedro was just a 10-year-old boy. The boy even told them his name, which the French then changed to Petrus Gonçalves. The court communicated the news to King Henry II, and the king immediately ordered that the boy be given a proper education. As you're probably already thinking, Petrus's life changed completely at that moment. Just like Belle's life changed once she got trapped in the Beast's castle in the beloved Disney movie. But life in King Henry II's palace was very different for Petrus. than it was for Belle. If the Disney princess got to befriend talking ceramics and wear beautiful silk dresses, Petrus needed to go to school on a daily basis. To the surprise of the court and his teachers, the boy excelled in Latin, which is no easy feat. During his life, he even became fluent in 3 languages. Now, Belle and Petrus did have one thing in common. They both had to learn etiquette. Remember how Lumiere did his best to teach Belle the ways of the palace? Perhaps we can say that it was similar for Petrus, except for the fact that it was probably a human that taught him what he needed to learn. The king became impressed, and soon Petrus was a frequent presence in the court. For the first time in his life, he would dress like a nobleman and take part in the court's social activities. But still, records show Petrus was never considered fully human due to his congenital disease. In 1559, King Henry II passed away, and Catherine de' Medici, his wife, took over the palace. If in the Disney version of the tale there is an infamous evil witch that curses the prince to become a beast, in this story, there is a not-so-kind queen. As far as records show, Queen Catherine de' Medici decided to arrange a marriage between Petrus and another gal also named Catherine. Let's call her Kathy, so we don't get too confused. The thing is, the queen didn't tell Kathy of Petrus's congenital condition, which doesn't sound too cool to me, huh? Kathy was the daughter of one of the court's royal servants, and as was the practice back then, when a queen told you to marry someone, you usually did. So Kathy didn't question the fact that she hadn't met Petrus, or knew nothing about him before the wedding. One can only imagine Kathy's surprise when, on her wedding day, she discovered who Petrus really was. There is no official record of her reaction, although rumor has it that Kathy wasn't too happy initially. But this story has a plot twist that Queen Catherine could never have imagined, and this plot twist is the cheesiest of them all: love. Like in the Disney fairy tale, Beauty, aka Kathy, found that true love was hidden way deep beneath the surface, and that Petrus's exterior appearance was only a small aspect of who he was. Perhaps Queen Catherine could never have imagined that the real Beauty and the Beast would be married for nearly 40 years. They would even have children. Nobody knew if the couple's children would be born with Petrus's condition, so it was a surprise when their first child was born without it. The couple had 7 children in total, and 4 of them did inherit Petrus's hypertrichosis. The Gonsalves family became a huge attraction in France's court. They became known as the Wild Family and spent the rest of their lives touring through Europe. Natural scientists were interested in studying the Gonsalves children, trying to better understand the ones born with hypertrichosis. Many portraits were painted of the family during the years they toured the European continent, but many say that they were always seen as an attraction rather than regular human beings. This makes one wonder, did Petrus and Kathy get their happy ending? We know that all Disney movie characters live happily ever after. But how true was that for the real-life Beauty and the Beast? Records were so fascinated with figuring out if Petrus was human or a wild man that there is not much about his life beyond that fact. In the original tale that inspired the movie, Beauty and the Beast also find a happy ending. Written by Gabrielle Suzanne Villeneuve in 1740, the original tale is said to be inspired by Petrus and Kathy's story. But maybe this tale is really as old as time and was born even before Petrus. You see, historians have collected over 23 variations of the Beauty and the Beast story around the world, and over 162 versions of the animal bridegroom story archetype. If this word doesn't mean anything to you, let's take a step back for a second. Fairy tales usually follow some archetypal structure. This means that they tend to reflect the human psyche as a way for us to understand some of our behaviors and feelings. In fact, some fairy tales should be called just tales, as there is nothing fairy-like about them. If you've ever read the Brothers Grimm or Hans Christian Andersen, you know what I mean. The animal bridegroom story trope usually shows a woman marrying an animal-like human that turns out to be a prince living under a curse. And some say this trope dates all the way back to the 1500s. The Disney movie never sets a historical date for the Beauty and the Beast story. From the outfits worn, some people say it's set around the 1700s, which would be the epoch that Villeneuve's tale represents, rather than Petrus's time period. All we know is that if this was inspired by the Gonsalves family life, Villeneuve twisted quite a few things. If in the movie, Belle breaks the Beast's curse with the power of true love, in real life, That's not what happened to Petrus. There was no evil witch cursing him. He would never be able to get rid of his condition. The turning point of this story would be if society would have accepted him as he was, and perhaps never have called him a beast to begin with.
We people used to have real superpowers, but they all disappeared long ago because these abilities became useless and evolution took them away. For example, one of these superpowers was hibernation sleep. Yeah, it doesn't sound as cool as teleportation or flying, but in the modern world, it would be helpful. Imagine that you go to bed before winter and wake up in the spring. No cold weather, no spending money on food at this time, just a long, deep sleep. So perhaps our ancient hominin ancestors, more like primates than humans, could fall into a long hibernation. It was about 500,000 years ago, hundreds of thousands of years before the appearance of the first Homo sapiens. Hominini of that time lived in caves during the Ice Age and fell into a long sleep to survive. However, this is not a confirmed fact, but scientists have some guesses about it. Paleontologists discovered many fossils of our ancestors in one Spanish cave. The analysis showed that hominini lacked vitamin D and fat reserves. These strange indicators showed that the inhabitants of these caves could be in a state of hibernation. Perhaps their metabolic processes slowed down and their fat and vitamin reserves were depleted to support life during a long sleep. Of course, such an ability could be useful in the modern world, but it has several disadvantages. Let's look at the example of bears and what problems they can face during hibernation. Unique metabolic processes support their long sleep, but if these processes are violated, then after waking up, the bear can get very sick. This may happen because of an insufficient amount of fat and food reserves. Another ability from the past would help save thousands of dollars for modern people. This ability is strong and healthy teeth. Today, we have dental clinics, high-tech equipment, hundreds of types of toothbrushes and toothpaste, mouthwashes, and much more for the health of our teeth. Despite this, ancient people had stronger and healthier teeth. More powerful jaws and sharp teeth allowed them to chew on hard meat, and the immunity of the oral cavity didn't allow bacteria to develop. But then, agriculture appeared. People started to eat grains. This added new species of bacteria to the oral cavity, weakened the jaw muscles, and provoked cavities. Teeth became more fragile, but they got the most severe blow when people discovered sugar. Sweets added a lot of problems to teeth health. Previously, teeth worked as a tool for processing hard materials, but then we began to eat soft food, meatballs, and fried chicken, and the strength of teeth became meaningless. Evolution took that away from us. Our ancestors were taller, stronger, more agile, and more resilient than we are. A couple of days spent in the fields while hunting mammoths were the equivalent of a month of regular training in the gym. People were not obese. They ate natural food and looked like athletes. But why were they taller? What influenced bone growth? Over the past 10,000 years, the changes in growth were most noticeable. But this trend has changed in our direction in the last few centuries. People have started to get taller. It's difficult to determine the exact cause of such changes. It can be genetics, environment, lifestyle, nutrition, or modern technologies. So, 40,000 years ago, Cro-Magnons hunted and gathered in Europe. They were better developed physically, thanks to this lifestyle. Their ancestors migrated to Europe from Africa, which was the reason for the tall growth. Longer bones were helpful for adaptation to the hot African climate, but after 30,000 years, the growth of people sharply decreased because of the onset of cold weather and the development of agriculture. Our ancestors went through times of famine, and their bodies shrank over time to adapt to a meager diet. In addition, Living next to livestock provoked the emergence of new diseases. All of it affected the appearance of ancient people. There are almost no such problems now. You can eat healthy food, receive medical care, and take vitamins. All this allowed us to grow a few inches taller. But one change in the human body still remains a mystery. We have the most advanced civilization in history today. People become professionals in neuroscience and thermonuclear physics, create powerful computers, have access to all the knowledge in the world, and study the boundless depths of space. But for some reason, our brains have become much smaller than those of people who lived several thousand years ago. But how is this possible, given that people were engaged in agriculture, trade, and the manufacture of simple tools in the distant past? Then big cities, architecture, art, and technology began to appear. And all this time, our brain was shrinking while humanity was moving forward. It lost a piece equal to 4 ping pong balls. The reason is not that people were more intelligent in the past. The volume of the brain is not related to intellectual level. It's possible that people's brains have shrunk because of collectivity. To understand what that means, let's take a look at ants. Scientists measured the brain size of some species. They saw that species participating in complex social systems had smaller brains. This means that if an ant interacts closely with other ants, sharing work with them, its brain decreases. Sharing duties with other species contributes to brain shrinkage. Its cognitive abilities are distributed among different groups performing different jobs. It seems like a brain unloads its working and thus becomes smaller. That is, if you live alone on an island, do agriculture, fish, and build a house alone, then your brain becomes bigger. But in a large society, where all these activities are distributed among many locals, the human brain is shrinking. In a sense, intelligence becomes collective. And at what point in time did human intelligence become as collective as possible? When writing appeared. It appeared about 2,000 years before the beginning of brain shrinkage. When people learned to write, they freed up a large memory area in the brain. They didn't have to keep all the necessary things and ideas in their minds. With the development of civilization, the collectivization of humankind grew. And then there was TV and the internet. We will discover how this affects our brains in the future. On the one hand, the volume may decrease even more. But on the other hand, we're surrounded by an endless stream of information. We don't know yet how it will affect the size of the brain. The collectivization of consciousness is only one of the hypotheses according to which our brain has increased. Another theory says that this happened because of the home lifestyle. The brain of a dog, cat, or other pet is smaller than their ancestors who lived in the wild without a human. When people started living in cities and spending less energy on getting food, their brains could also begin to shrink. In addition to the size of the brain, people have undergone many changes. Humanity now shows a huge variety in appearance, which the early Homo sapiens didn't have. In the distant past, they possessed the same physical properties characteristic of a particular region. For example, a short and stocky build was typical for people living in cold conditions. The body area of a small person helps to keep warm better. Also, the body area of a tall person gives off heat more efficiently, so people in warm African regions are taller. And in places where it's scorching during the day and frosts come at night, people can develop the ability to lower their body temperature without feeling cold and shivering. This phenomenon concerns the Australian native tribes living in the central desert. The environment affects external characteristics almost as well as genetics. And over the past 40,000 years, the speed of evolution has increased. The ability to travel and the growth of the people population contributed to the mixing of different ethnic groups across the planet, which also provided diversity in evolution. it seems like humanity still comes to the highest point of our evolution, and perhaps there are no limits to that.
Let's take a walk down memory lane, back to the earliest days of human history when our ancestors walked the earth as nomadic tribes. Consider for a moment what life must have been like for those with impaired vision. For those lucky enough to have only minor sight issues, they could probably navigate their way around without too much difficulty. But for those with severe vision problems, the challenges were formidable. Their productivity and usefulness to their tribe could be greatly compromised, potentially leading to their abandonment. As we settled down and formed communities, the way we treated each other began to shift, and we started to look at those with severe sight issues with a bit more kindness and empathy. However, without the scientific knowledge that we have today, there was limited capacity to provide support. Before glasses were available, those with minor vision problems like nearsightedness were probably not that affected. While their vision impairments might have made certain tasks like hunting or spotting threats more difficult, these individuals could still contribute to the survival of their tribe and therefore were generally accepted by their peers. Over time, as vision progressively worsened, many people learned to adapt. The gradual decline in their eyesight over several years may not have even been noticeable to them, so they developed coping mechanisms, like relying more heavily on their other senses. It's also worth noting that precise vision wasn't as essential then as it is now. For a huge chunk of our history, literacy rates were low, often around 20% or less, and formal education was not essential for most jobs. As such, vision problems did not necessarily affect an individual's ability to work or learn. Most people were not expected to perform tasks that required exceptional eyesight. So, they could get by as long as they could carry out their tasks, which would often be in the form of physical work. It may seem harsh by today's standards, but if your sight was good enough to work on, say, a field, you could at least secure food and income. Fast forward to the 13th century, when the first glimmers of what we would recognize today as eyeglasses began to appear. These early versions of spectacles were fundamentally just magnifying glasses, only serving to help with reading tasks. As the centuries rolled by, glasses grew more complex and began to resemble what we recognize today around the 17th and 18th centuries. Now, let's look at the interesting history of eyeglasses for a bit. Their journey to completion took several centuries, dotted with countless visionaries and their inventive ideas. However, the mystery behind who invented wearable glasses remains unsolved. We do know that our ancient friends, the Romans, were the first ones to unravel the magic of glass and its power to magnify tiny text, giving birth to many magnifying glasses. Fast forward to Italy in the 13th century, where we meet the earliest wearable glasses in recorded history. These had rudimentary lenses crafted by skilled glassblowers, which were popped into frames made of wood, leather, or sometimes even animal horn, and held up to the face or balanced on the nose. As the tech improved during the Renaissance, these contraptions became more common. How do we know these glasses existed, you ask? Well, thanks to art. Paintings from the early Renaissance period often portray scholars with handheld frames or eyeglasses perched on their noses. Based on rudimentary vision tests, the Italian glassblowers fashioned lenses of varying thicknesses. As their popularity soared, these eyeglasses began their journey from Italy to the rest of Europe, becoming a luxury accessory available to those who could afford them. Given the importance placed on knowledge during the Renaissance, glasses became badges of intellectual prowess and wealth. For a while, it looked like eyeglass technology had hit a plateau. The next significant leap forward didn't happen until the 1700s, when eyeglasses became hands-free with the introduction of temples that extended over the ears. One of the most notable examples of these modern glasses is the Martin's Margins, designed by inventor Benjamin Martin. Today, these glasses are highly sought after by collectors, but they were the trailblazers in the quest for more accurate and thinner lenses held together by robust frames. Once glasses graduated to being over the ear, their evolution seemed to pick up the pace. Even Benjamin Franklin contributed to this rapid development by inventing the bifocal lens, a nifty solution for those juggling near and far-sighted vision issues. He ingeniously sliced two lenses and merged them into one frame. Around the same time, scissor spectacles gained popularity. These were essentially pocket-friendly glasses, foldable like a pair of scissors, and perfect for those moments when you needed a quick peek at something important. Some gentlemen weren't thrilled about wearing glasses all the time, so these compact glasses were the perfect solution. As the 19th century arrived, eyeglasses were still handmade and not accessible to everyone. But thanks to the upcoming Industrial Revolution, mass production of both frames and lenses were on the horizon, making it easier for hardworking folks to correct their vision. The early 1800s also witnessed the introduction of unique cylindrical lenses designed to correct astigmatism. In the 20th century, eyeglasses began to morph from a vision necessity to a fashion accessory. An array of frames with different shapes, materials, and colors started flooding the market, allowing wearers to select glasses that complemented their face shape, eye color, or even their outfit. Take Theodore Roosevelt, for instance. He rocked glasses with no earpieces that stayed put with a nose clip. Although these fell out of style as they became associated with the older generation, they were quite the rage back in the day. The real game changer was the advent of sturdy plastics. Frames no longer had to rely on wood, metal, or horn. Plastic could be molded into an assortment of shapes and sizes. The 20th century was also when we witnessed the rise of sunglasses. While the idea was born in Asia during the 12th century, they were originally intended to mask the expressions of judges in court, not to improve vision or shield from the sun. Several manufacturers played around with colored lenses, but not for protective reasons. Soon enough, though, tinted sunglasses became popular for light sensitivity due to certain medical conditions. This trend caught on quickly, and by the end of the 1920s, sunglasses were being mass-produced not just for sun protection, but also to reduce glare. The 80s brought us plastic lenses, which were less prone to breaking and could be made lighter and thinner than their glass counterparts. And the innovation didn't stop there. Today, we have glasses with protective coatings that reduce glare and block harmful UV light. Fascinating as this may have been, another interesting discovery has to do with the percentage of people affected by vision issues. Some studies suggest that short-sightedness or myopia wasn't as widespread in the past as it is today. Truth is, we've seen a skyrocketing number of folks diagnosed with this condition. Projections even suggest that by 2050, every second person on the planet might be myopic. One particular study brought to light that myopia now impacts more than double the number of kids in the UK compared to the 60s. Also, in some parts of Asia, the situation is even more pronounced. While doctors and researchers worldwide are trying to figure out the root cause of this problem, some label it as nothing short of an epidemic. The theories are many, with some pointing the finger at genetics or the surge in time spent glued to screens and buried in books. But then there are other scientists who've noticed a link between children who play less outside and the likelihood of developing myopia. Regardless of what's fueling this situation, it's fair to say that myopia probably didn't impact as many folks in the days of old as it does today. The relatively recent invention of glasses for nearsightedness suggests that it wasn't such a pressing issue in the past. Maybe people found ways to adjust their lifestyles to manage their short-sightedness better? Or perhaps there was a greater emphasis on matching jobs to people's visual abilities instead of hunting for tech solutions to level the playing field.
You're an adventurer looking for a golden hourglass hidden in the jungle of an exotic country. Finally, you find the artifact. Someone starts shouting as soon as you grab it. "Stop! This is the police! Hands up!" You look around and see two officers. You turn the hourglass over and fall into a suddenly formed portal that takes you through space and time. Hey you, stranger, don't move! What are you doing in our temple? You look around and see two guys with swords. They're the police of ancient Babylon. The vast kingdom in Mesopotamia was the first in history to invent a list of laws and punishments for their violation. The list of these laws was called the Code of Hammurabi and contained 282 laws. They were carved on stone pillars around the 10th century BCE. The laws had rules about the family and behavior in society, and generally were similar to the laws of modern civilizations. The authorities of Babylon created special police squads consisting of locals. Their goal was to monitor public order and ensure no one broke the law. Some records of the squad's work have survived to this day. They talk about how the ancient police stopped noisy feasts, monitored tax payments, and searched for thieves and looters. In general, their routine was similar to the routine of modern police. They guarded temples and made sure that nothing was taken from them. You're now in their temple, holding the golden hourglass. The sand pours down, and you teleport to another place. It's the 14th century. You're in Nigeria, on a hot plain under the scorching sun. You hear someone approaching you from behind. Stop! Don't move! Your fate will be decided at the meeting. Two Okonko guards, members of the Igbo ethnic group, walk to you holding spears. Okonko consisted of rich and poor people, young and old. They were the judges of justice and ensured that no one violated the laws. Each village had its own Okonko squad. They severely punished those who cheated or harmed other people. Okonko also solved land disputes. Before passing a verdict or sentence, Okonko discussed it at public meetings. You haven't broken their law, but you're a stranger in their village, so they want to grab you. Fortunately, the hourglass transports you out of there. Now you're inside a temple in ancient Egypt. You hear barking dogs, screaming monkeys, and human voices. Who are you? You turn around and see the Magi, the police of the Middle Kingdom of ancient Egypt. These experienced guys with swords patrol the streets with dogs and even monkeys. They were residents of the neighboring kingdom of Nubia. Still, as the territory of Egypt expanded, they offered their services as the guardians of order. During the New Kingdom, the temple priests of Egypt performed police functions. They protected temples and caught looters and thieves. If someone stole something from a temple, temple priests arrested the thief and conducted their own investigation. They won't investigate anything this time as you disappear and continue your journey. You're in a hot jungle now. You can see large stone buildings through bushes and trees and hear a flowing river and people's voices. You're next to a large agricultural area. It looks like a modern civilization in a tropical forest. But this is the 15th century, and you're in the Incan Empire on the South American coast. Police officers are called tokrikokes here, which means the one who sees everything. Two tokrikokes pass by you and don't tell you anything. The Incan Empire had a developed legal system, and no one could arrest you just like that. The one who accused another person of violating the law had to be above the rank of the accused. Therefore, tokrikokes were the most senior people in cities. They kept order and also conducted a population census. Their duties also included the distribution of land and the construction of roads and bridges. They held all court proceedings publicly and punished those who committed serious violations. But for petty hooliganism, people were just subjected to public censure. Here, you feel safe thanks to the harsh but fair laws. But the hourglass is restless and takes you to ancient Greece. And to be honest, you're out of luck because the Cryptia of Sparta is in charge here. These tough guys got trained in duels from an early age and developed incredible strength and endurance. Yeah, everything is as we've seen it in the movies. The Cryptia means hidden. This police force always acted cautiously and quietly to deliver a crushing blow. They didn't have armors or big swords. They were wearing light clothes and had sharp knives. The Cryptia kept order and made sure farmers paid taxes and shared their harvest. Also, the Cryptia suppressed any rebellions among people. Unlike the people in other countries, the Cryptia worked at night and rested during the day. Well, it's daytime, so no one will arrest you. But if it were night, you would hardly be able to escape from the Spartan police. You teleport to ancient Judea, where a fair judicial system was highly valued. Each city had its judge and 2 trained soldiers under their command. They were called Judean shotarim. These fighters were excellent at archery and sword fights. Their duties included checking and setting market prices and resolving private property and public safety issues. Dogs in every house should be chained, there should be no pits on the street, and the sale of knives and swords should be strictly regulated. Any violation of the law was investigated and dealt with in court. The locals really appreciated this order and paid for it as taxpayers. Now the Golden Hourglass takes you to 15th century West Africa. You're in the Songhai Empire. This was one of the largest countries in West Africa with first-class police called the Kadi. Serious violations were punished cruelly, so people were afraid to break the law. The Kadi were government officials appointed by the king. They decided who to court-martial and who to punish with a small fine. They monitored not only the order in cities, but also the environment of the king. If someone wanted to commit treason or overthrow the ruler, the Kadi found out about it and neutralized the threat. Now you find yourself in a very hot place, but not because the sun is scorching, but because there are flames everywhere. The building you're in is on fire and you don't know what to do. At that moment, 2 guys run inside and pull you out. They just saved your life. Meet the Vigiles, the police of the Roman Empire. More precisely, they were firefighters. In 21 BCE, the Roman emperor ordered his subjects to extinguish fires in the homes of the nobility and ordinary poor people. For this, the emperor received praise and decided to create the first public fire service in Rome. The Vigiles patrolled the streets and extinguished fires caused by hot weather or hooligans. Soon, the Vigiles began to keep order and catch robbers. They wore light armor and had whips and staffs. You don't have time to thank them for saving your life because the hourglass takes you to another era. The Mauryan Empire, which lasted from 321 to 185 BCE, was the first empire of ancient India. You don't have time to do anything as 2 big guys grab you and blindfold you with a rag. They're taking you to interrogation. Every city in this state had a police chief and his team called Gops. They did all the police work and spied for the emperor. They looked for other spies, registered new visitors, and followed them. They patrolled the streets, kept order, and knew everything happening in the cities. They're going to put you in a cage, but you disappear right from their hands. You've finally returned to the 21st century. There's no more sand in the top part of the hourglass. So you ponder committing a small robbery to see how modern-day police will respond. But then the hourglass reappears and drops you into prison so you can get a close-up view. Then you wake up.
You have heard about Nikola Tesla. You have definitely heard about the Great Pyramids in Egypt. But what if I told you that Tesla may have probably uncovered the ancient mystery surrounding the pyramids? Wait, what? Is this a crossover episode? Nope. It's highly probable that the secrets of the pyramids are hidden in plain sight. But first, let's recap what we know about the pyramids. What's so mysterious about them? I mean, they are just old quirky buildings, aren't they? One of the biggest questions is how they were built. Some people think that the pyramids were created by people using only their hands and muscles. But others think that there might have been some kind of crazy energy source that we don't know about yet. Like, what if aliens helped out or something? Just kidding. But this idea of some unknown energy source being used to build the pyramids has been around for ages. Even in old texts, like the pyramid texts, it talks about how the gods gave us something to build a great power. So maybe there was something really powerful and mysterious going on back then? Who knows? Back in the early 1900s, he got obsessed with the Great Pyramids of Egypt. He read numerous books about these ancient structures and was blown away by how much energy they seemed to have. At that time, not many people knew much about electricity. and Tesla started to wonder if there was some kind of advanced tech hidden in the pyramids. He had an idea that the power of the pyramids had to do with electromagnetism, and he put a lot of time and effort into trying to figure out the mystery. Tesla had some pretty unusual theories about the Great Pyramids. He thought that they could actually store and move electricity, which could then be used to power up the areas around them. He also had this theory that the pyramids were built using some kind of crystal energy. He believed that the chambers inside the pyramids could have these super powerful crystals that could control the electromagnetic fields. But that's not all. Tesla also had this idea that the materials used to make the pyramids had properties that allowed them to trap energy from the sun and the moon. And not just a little bit of energy. He thought that the pyramid could actually create this massive energy field that could light up whole cities or even brighten up dark places. He thought that the pyramids could be used as giant power plants to generate electricity and run machines. Tesla even believed that the pyramids were somehow linked to cosmic energy, which could be used for spiritual enlightenment and healing. How very new age of him. Anyway, Tesla wasn't just pulling these ideas out of thin air. He was seriously into studying everything he could about the pyramids, from ancient artifacts and texts to hieroglyphs and drawings. And he came up with this idea that the pyramids were designed to be energy amplifiers, and some kind of unknown energy source was used during their construction. Some people thought Tesla was eccentric for coming up with these theories, but his ideas have actually had a huge impact on the way we think about the pyramids today. Researchers and scholars have been digging into his theories for years and using them to uncover some of the biggest mysteries surrounding these ancient structures. For example, recently scientists have used theoretical physics to investigate how the Great Pyramid of Egypt would react to certain radio waves. They found out that if the radio waves were a certain length, the pyramid could concentrate the energy inside its rooms and focus it under its base. The scientists did lots of calculations to figure this out. They first thought about what radio wavelengths would work best. Then they made a model of how the pyramid would react to the waves. They figured out how much of the energy from the waves would get absorbed or spread out. Lastly, they checked how the energy would move around inside the pyramid when the waves hit it. To help explain all of this, the scientists used something called multipole analysis. This is when you take a complicated object and break it down into simpler parts. Then you can see how each part interacts with the energy that's coming in. It's like taking apart a puzzle to see how each piece fits together. The researchers are interested in how all of this can be used in the future. They want to make really tiny particles that can do the same thing as the pyramid, but with light. By changing the size, shape, and the material of these particles, they can control how the light moves around them. This can be really useful for things like making tiny sensors or super efficient solar cells. The scientists had to make some guesses when they were doing their research. They assumed that there weren't any hidden spaces inside the pyramid, and that the material used to build it was all the same. But even with these guesses, they still made some pretty impressive discoveries. But the pyramid study is not the only proof that Tesla was ahead of his time. There are more Tesla's projects that seemed unrealistic at the time, but that scientists and enthusiasts reevaluate and try to implement today. Let's talk about Tesla's most ambitious project, the Wardenclyffe Transmission Tower. Back in 1900, Tesla was already a big shot when it came to electrical engineering in America. People were blown away by his amazing inventions and the fact that he managed to outdo Thomas Edison in the battle of currents. However, Tesla wasn't content to rest on his laurels. He decided to embark on his most ambitious project yet, the transmission tower at Wardenclyffe. It was built between 1901 and 1905, and it was based on one of Tesla's breakthrough ideas. He had a vision to make the impossible possible by creating a global wireless communication system. It would use Earth itself as a conductor, transmitting music, news, stock market reports, secured military communications, and even facsimile images. Does it sound familiar? Right, it sounds just like the internet that we use today, only without the use of any wires. But Tesla had a much bigger dream in mind: to transmit power wirelessly. He already proved that high-frequency signals could be sent without any wires using his Tesla coil transformers, and this sparked his obsession with wireless energy transmission. His vision was to not only transform the way we communicate, but also to find a way to transfer power currents globally by tapping into the Earth's natural energy. Tesla believed that there was an abundance of free energy all around us that could be used for humanity's benefit. In 1899, he conducted some top-secret experiments and got convinced that it was possible to transmit electrical power through the Earth's upper atmosphere. This is actually how the Wardenclyffe Tower was created. It was supposed to be the prototype station for a network of towers all over the globe that would provide the whole world with wireless energy. Unfortunately, Tesla didn't have the resources or the patience of his investors to bring this project to fruition. It ran into all sorts of financial problems and roadblocks, and in 1917, the unfinished tower was finally torn down for scrap metal to pay off Tesla's mounting debts. Now it remains a sad reminder that even the greatest minds can sometimes fall short of their dreams. The original red brick laboratory, however, is still there, and it is the only Tesla lab that has survived. Fun fact, in 2017, a film crew made a crazy discovery. They used ground-penetrating radar to explore the area around Wardenclyffe, and they found a whole series of tunnels stretching for hundreds of feet underneath the site. Nobody knows exactly what these tunnels were used for, but people have been speculating for years that they were part of Tesla's grand plan. Wardenclyffe, of course, is a major landmark for Tesla enthusiasts from all over the world. Who knows? Maybe someone will finally crack the mystery of the tunnels one day. But even if they don't, the legacy of Tesla and his amazing ideas lives on.
So how come the world is still talking about a statue that only existed for a mere 54 years over 2,000 years ago? What made this impressive ancient construction so remarkable that we're still discussing it? I'm talking about the Colossus of Rhodes, of course. It's considered to be one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world, along with the Great Pyramid of Giza or the Gardens of Babylon. There are a lot of mysteries surrounding this ancient statue, but let's look at some of the facts first, shall we? What we do know is that the local Rhodians decided to start a massive project once a Macedonian siege over their island was over. In other words, it was their way of honoring the higher powers for their victory. Using a lot of material left behind by the Macedonians, they started the construction of the Colossus, which is estimated to have taken about 12 years. Most contemporary descriptions of the sculpture agree that it stood about 105 feet tall. Now, just to compare, that's about the size of the Statue of Liberty today, which is 151 feet tall. It may not seem like a lot. I mean, Lady Liberty is currently ranked as the 52nd tallest statue in the world. The champion here would be the Statue of Unity in India, standing proud at an astonishing 597 feet. But for ancient times, that was quite an accomplishment. But is the similar height the only connection between the Colossus of Rhodes and the Statue of Liberty? Not really. We do know that they both also refer to Lady Liberty as the modern Colossus, since both statues were constructed as a symbol of liberation. There's even a plaque placed inside the pedestal of the New York statue, inscribed with the first verse of the sonnet, "The New Colossus," not like the brazen giant of Greek fame. To build this massive Colossus statue, they sure needed a lot of bronze. Some ancient records even recount that the construction required 27,000 to 29,000 pounds of bronze. Even for modern times, this is a lot, but back then, they even called it an operation that involved the bronze industry of the entire world. The man tasked with bringing the statue to life was Charles of Lindos, a local Greek sculptor. The whole construction took place from 294 to 282 BCE. But unfortunately, Charles never got to see the end result. We don't know for sure why that happened, but some records claim constructing the Colossus of Rhodes may have led him to complete bankruptcy, since he failed to accurately estimate the cost for the massive statue. Anyway, we still don't know for sure how it was possible to build a statue this big back in those days. They had none of the equipment we have today, like excavators or elevators. Some old records said that they had to invent a completely new, custom method to build it. It all happened on the location, put together piece by piece. They supposedly split the statue into many different sections, and the first one to be constructed was the feet. Once each section was done, huge mounds of earth were placed around it, so they could continue working on the next section above. However, these records were made more than 100 years after the Colossus was finished, so there's little we can say about the accuracy of this information. In all those 12 years, the local Greeks worked around the clock to build the Colossus of Rhodes. They started with a white marble base that they placed at the statue's feet. They then continued with some sort of an iron skeleton, to which they attached the bronze plates. Why did they choose bronze, though? Well, that was more for practical reasons, since bronze is stronger than iron and it can also sustain extreme weather conditions. More so, if you think about it, the statue was located pretty close to the sea, so the air surrounding it would have been pretty salty. That's why they needed to make it out of quite sturdy material. And what about the location? Well, that's something that has been up for debate for a long time. Researchers initially believed that the statue stood with each leg on either side of the Mandrake Harbor, one of many in the city of Rhodes, basically straddling its entrance. As imposing as that may sound, it was likely not the case. First of all, that would have meant the harbor would have to have been closed for the whole duration of the construction, which doesn't seem to match all the other records. More so, after the statue had fallen, it would have probably blocked the entirety of the harbor, which again doesn't seem to be mentioned anywhere. Most recent depictions say that it most likely stood either on the eastern side of the Mandrake Harbor or maybe even further inland. So, what happened to this impressive structure? Is there really nothing left of it to this day? And why did it survive for only 54 years, since it took so long to build and it was so important for locals? Well, as admired and valued as it was to the Greeks, an earthquake took the Colossus of Rhodes away from them. The story goes that because of the movement of the earth beneath it, the statue snapped at its knees and was completely laid on the ground. Nonetheless, the statue still continued to be admired for centuries. The Rhodians refused to rebuild it as they considered it a sign and did not dare intervene with destiny. By the middle of the 7th century, they had taken away what was left of the statue completely. Legend says it took about 900 camels to carry all the bronze away from the location. And what about the looks of the statue? This is also one aspect that is still shrouded in mystery. Even though it was a symbol of the locals' pride in maintaining their independence, they did not use the depiction of the statue for any of the coins they made, even though that was kind of customary. Other art historians do think, however, that the Colossus was similar to other depictions of the same mythological creature, a male figure that had rays of light rising from its head. The position of its hands is also still up for debate. Some say it might have even been holding a torch. We don't know if his hands were pointed straight down or whether the right arm was raised, like in similar representations in Greek mythology. The original might not be here for us to admire anymore, but there are some plans out there to rebuild it. A group of European architects intends to build a 21st century version of the ancient statue. This new construction is planned to stretch 500 feet tall. It should serve as a cultural center combined with a lighthouse. To make sure it won't have the same destiny as its ancient ancestor, these designers intend to use a lot of technology available today. Firstly, they plan to cover the whole exterior of the modern Colossus with solar panels so that the enormous building has enough electricity. They also intend to use modern resources to make sure earthquakes and wind forces won't affect the massive structure yet again. To do that, they plan to build the statue as a tripod structure, made from its 2 legs and a third pillar of support, constructed from the sash draped over the statue's arm and touching the ground. They also plan to place heavy steel support around the base for counterbalance. They even thought of a suspension system that would permit the statue to rock back and forth, making it a bit more flexible and able to resist all the various weather conditions. The manufacturer's suggested retail price on this project is quite high though, estimated at around $283 million. Supporters of the modern Colossus are optimistic, as they are certain they can raise that impressive amount of cash through crowdfunding and private investments.
Phew! This summer has been turning up the heat like never before. We feel like roasted marshmallows on a sizzling grill. Yes, the world is getting hotter, but some regions have always fought with high temperatures. It turns out people had some inventions to keep themselves cool in ancient times too. Some of them are still functioning, even 3,000 years later. Let's take a look at how people saved themselves from heat throughout history. So, put an ice cube into your cold drink and get ready to hear how people survived the heat. Speaking of ice cubes, do you know that the Persians made an ice storage system? In the deserts of ancient Persia, people had an out-of-the-box idea about how to prevent their food from turning into a melted mess. These ingenious Persians stumbled upon a physics trick that allowed them to create ice in the middle of the desert. They called these cool structures yakhchals, which basically means ice pits. These ice pits were not your ordinary coolers. They were like secret underground fridges. They looked like dome-shaped mud brick structures on the outside, but inside, it was a whole different world. These ice pits had an evaporation cooler system that worked like magic. At night, when the desert cooled down, Persians made use of the radiative cooling effect. They set up cleverly designed trenches to hold thin layers of water. The water froze, defying the desert heat. Then there were underground square storage areas. The Persians collected the melting ice water from these cool trenches, and during the night, they froze it again, making the most of the desert's natural chill. To add to the cooling effect, they built a wall to shade the storage areas from the hot midday sun. And that's not all. They had this fantastic wind-catching contraption called a badger that caught the breeze and directed it right into the ice pits. Fresh air plus ice. Cool breeze. A winning combo. They even had intricate water channels called qanats to bring water to the ice pits and homes all the way from the nearby mountains. As time passed, these yakhchals faded into history and modern technology took over. But hey, there's good news too. Some awesome folks in Iran are restoring these ancient coolers. So, if you ever find yourself in the desert, don't forget to pay a visit to these marvelous places and witness the genius of the ancient Persians firsthand. Now, I want to focus more on the wind catchers because they don't just help make ice cubes. They actually function as a cooling system as well. Back in the day, those clever architectural wonders were all the rage in places like Persia, modern-day Iran, Egypt, and the Middle East. Imagine tower-like structures with openings at various levels strategically placed to harness the power of nature's breeze. These openings were like magical portals for the wind. They captured those refreshing gusts and guided them right into people's living spaces. Basically, they were natural air conditioners. The breeze would gracefully flow downward, cooling the ground as it danced through the building. The secret sauce lies in the details. The tower's height, the number of sides, the openings, and the positioning of the interior blades. Everything plays its role in how efficiently the wind towers work out. Thanks to these wind catchers, ancient societies could enjoy comfy indoor temperatures without sweating. Can you imagine living in those times? Feeling the gentle breeze whisking through your home, keeping you feeling fresh and chilled out? The Persians are often credited for inventing these awesome wind catchers. But hey, don't forget about Egypt. There, you can find traces of similar structures dating all the way back to 1300 BCE. Yes, the invention of wind catchers may have occurred in ancient Egypt, but Yazid in Iran is the city with the largest number of wind catchers. People wouldn't have been able to live there without these ancient ACs because there was almost no rain in the area throughout the year. Now, let's look at these perforated double-skinned exteriors. Imagine dressing up a building with a fancy perforated screen. It's like giving its exterior a stylish makeover while keeping things chill inside. This genius technique, firstly, scatters the natural daylight, so no harsh sunbeams to blind you. The screen also offers shade like a pro, giving the building's interior a much-needed break from the blazing sun. Think of it as a natural sun hat for your home. Placing this screen about 4 feet away from the outer walls creates a breezy, dreamy hallway for fresh air circulation. And hey, they add a touch of elegance to the building too. These structures are sometimes called jali. Jaipur, India, for example, has an average daytime temperature of about 100 degrees Fahrenheit. So these structures are lifesavers. Jalis come in various forms, crafted from cement, earth, and wood. It's a cultural symbol deeply embedded in Indian architecture. You can find its captivating presence in iconic historical buildings like the majestic Taj Mahal and the Grand Red Fort in Delhi. But hey, it's not just a thing of the past. It's still rocking modern architecture scenes, and its charm has sparked creativity in artists and designers worldwide. It adorns the building's exterior, its cross-section showing a larger opening on the outside and a smaller one on the inside. This is where the Venturi effect steps in to show off its physics prowess. As the air flows through the narrowing passage, it picks up speed, creating a difference in pressure between the inside and outside of the building. Air blowing at a higher speed gets compressed, and when released, it cools down. Mashrabia is a wooden lattice or screen used in the Middle East and North Africa. These decorative wonders are like window blinds, but they do more than just look pretty. They're smart too. They give privacy, shading you from the sun, and let fresh air and light in. Some people also add clay pots filled with water, sand, or damp straw to their designs. As hot air breezes through the holes, it also passes through the pot's porous surface. The moisture inside evaporates, cooling the air. This is a perfect low-cost technique for hot and dry climates. It's eco-friendly, and there's no need for electricity. Now, let's fast forward to today. Designers are getting creative, mixing traditional wisdom with modern tech. At the Al Bahar Towers in Abu Dhabi, they've got it too. Picture over 2,000 hexagonal panels that dance with the sun's movement, providing shade to the building's interior. Water evaporation was another secret weapon for ancient people. Simple, yet super effective. Plus, ancient Egyptians hung wet mats and curtains in doorways. When the air passed through them, it cooled down, providing a relief from the scorching sun. Ancient architects were the masters of maximizing airflow. They knew how to cross-ventilate and let hot air escape while inviting cooler air to the party. Speaking of ancient Rome, bathhouses were the place to be back then. It was like a community hub. People gathered to chat about politics, play sports, and, of course, take a relaxing dip. The frigidarium was the cool spot in Roman baths. After a steamy soak in the caldarium, Romans dashed to this giant pool to chill out. Then in some places, like Cappadocia in Turkey, people went underground to hide from the heat. They carved cozy dwellings in volcanic rock, harnessing the Earth's natural cooling powers. So the lesson here is simple. Architects and designers can create wonders by combining local traditions with smart tech. California's Death Valley boasts the highest officially registered temperature to date, with 134 degrees Fahrenheit in 1913. Meanwhile, Africa's sweltering record stands at 131 degrees Fahrenheit in Kebili, Tunisia, as noted in 1931. In Europe, the highest temperature ever documented reached almost 120 degrees Fahrenheit in Sicily in August 2021. Then, in 2022, the UK had the hottest summer of all time.
Hey, if you think Stonehenge is one of the oldest stone monuments ever, well, let me introduce you to Göbekli Tepe. Buckle up, we gotta travel to Turkey to meet this really old guy. Yeah, he's too old to travel. Jokes aside, Göbekli Tepe, an archaeological site located in southeastern Turkey that dates back to the Neolithic period around 10,000 BCE. It's considered to be one of the oldest and most significant archaeological discoveries in recent times. The site consists of a series of circular and rectangular structures made of stone pillars. Yeah, it does look like its younger brother Stonehenge. Some of those pillars are decorated with intricate carvings of animals and other symbols. Now, you may be wondering, hey, why on earth did they make such a fascinating building? What was its purpose? Sorry, I got no answer for that. The purpose of the site is still unknown, but it is believed to have been a ceremonial center for the ancient people who lived in the area. The discovery of Göbekli Tepe has challenged long-held beliefs about the development of human civilization, as it suggests that complex societies may have emerged much earlier than previously thought. Okay, pack your stuff, our travels just started. Next destination, Masada. It's an ancient fortress located in Israel on a plateau overlooking the Dead Sea. Hey, look at that view, spectacular, huh? It was built by King Herod the Great in the 1st century BCE, and it was very smartly built. Within the fortress, there were various facilities such as storehouses, barracks, a palace, and a set of cisterns capable of holding approximately 40,000 cubic meters of rainwater. People living there believed that the collected runoff from a single day's rainfall could provide sustenance for over 1,000 individuals for a period of 2 to 3 years. Access to the fortress was limited to 3 steep and winding paths leading up to fortified gates. Still, at one point, the fortress was occupied by people who had fled Jerusalem after the city was captured by the Romans. They held out against the invaders for several months, but eventually they were defeated. But these guys didn't surrender. The story of Masada has become a symbol of resistance and bravery. Today, Masada is a popular tourist attraction and a UNESCO World Heritage Site. The next flight is going to be short. We're popping over to Egypt to see the Karnak Temple Complex. It's a vast ancient Egyptian temple complex located in the city of Luxor, Egypt. It was built over a period of 2,000 years and covers an area of more than 200 acres. The complex is dedicated to the worship of the deity Amun-Ra. Wait a minute, that should be Amun-Ra, and it was one of the most important religious centers in ancient Egypt. The Karnak Temple consists of several temples, chapels, and other buildings, including the Great Temple of Amun, the Temple of Khonsu, and the Temple of Ptah. Ptah! The Great Temple of Amun is the largest and most impressive temple in the complex, with massive columns, statues, and other decorations. One of the most famous features of the Karnak Temple complex is the Avenue of Sphinxes, which is a long avenue lined with Sphinx statues that leads from the entrance of the complex to the Great Temple of Amun. Another notable feature is the Hypostyle Hall, which is a massive hall with 134 columns that are over 70 feet high. The Karnak Temple Complex is a popular tourist attraction and a UNESCO World Heritage Site. It's considered one of the most important archaeological sites in Egypt and provides a fascinating glimpse into the religion and culture of ancient Egypt. Hey, we can't hop on the next flight and leave Egypt until we see the Pyramid of Djoser. It has another name, by the way. It's also known as the Step Pyramid. This ancient Egyptian site is located in Saqqara. It was built during the 27th century BCE for the pharaoh Djoser by his architect Imhotep, who is considered one of the most important figures in Egyptian history. People believe this pyramid is the first monumental structure built entirely of stone and is an important example of early Egyptian architecture. The pyramid originally stood at 203 feet tall and was surrounded by a complex of buildings and courtyards. It was constructed in 6 layers, each smaller than the one below it, giving it the distinctive step-like appearance. The pyramid was used as a burial place for Pharaoh Djoser and was surrounded by a vast necropolis that contained the tombs of many other important officials. The Grateful Dead? The Pyramid of Djoser has several renovations and additions over the centuries, including the addition of a limestone casing that covered the original step structure. However, much of the pyramid was destroyed over time, and today only the central core remains. Despite this, it remains an important archaeological site and a popular tourist attraction in Egypt. Alrighty, we're ready to move on. There's one more pretty recent discovery we gotta see today. The Tower of Jericho was only discovered during excavations in the 1950s and 60s. It's an ancient stone tower located in the city of Jericho in the West Bank. Just like Göbekli Tepe, this one is believed to be one of the oldest stone structures in the world, dating back to approximately 8000 BCE. The tower stands at over 28 feet tall. It's made up of two main sections, an inner tower and an outer tower, which are connected by a series of stairs. The purpose of the Tower of Jericho is not entirely clear, but it is believed to have served as a defensive structure or a watchtower. It may have also had religious significance, as it was located near a sacred spring. The Tower of Jericho is a significant archaeological site and has provided valuable insights into the early history of human civilization. It's open to visitors and is a popular destination for tourists interested in ancient history. Now, this ancient site even got attention from Netflix, and they made a movie where the action takes place in Mohenjo-Daro. This site was a major center of the Indus Valley civilization in present-day Pakistan. Mohenjo-Daro was one of the largest cities of the ancient world, with a population estimated to have been around 40,000 in its peak. Trust me, that must have been a crazy megalopolis back then. The city was notable for its advanced urban planning, with sophisticated drainage and sanitation systems, and its impressive architecture, including the Great Bath and the Granary. Mohenjo-Daro was abandoned around 1900 BCE, and its ruins were only rediscovered in the 1920s. Today, it is a UNESCO World Heritage Site and an important archaeological site for the study of ancient South Asian civilization. We're heading to a teeny-tiny country that has quite an impressive history. Welcome to Malta. The Tsigansia Temples are a Neolithic site located on the Mediterranean island of Gozo. They're probably one of the oldest freestanding structures in the world, dating back to around 3600 to 3200 BCE. The temples consist of two megalithic structures, each with multiple rooms and altars. The name Tsigantia means giant tower in Maltese, as people believe that only giants could have built such massive structures. The temples are believed to have been used for religious purposes and are considered to be an important example of prehistoric architecture. They were added to the UNESCO World Heritage List in 1980. Well, you must be pretty tired, but there's one more place we gotta visit today. Our plane is already landing in Armenia, and we're here to see the Temple of Garni. Look, this one is well preserved. This temple dates back to the 1st century CE. It was built by King Tiridates I as a dedication to the sun deity Mir. Sadly, the temple was destroyed in the 17th century during an earthquake, which is quite a common thing for this area, but it was later reconstructed in the 20th century. Today, it's a popular tourist attraction and is also listed as a UNESCO World Heritage Site.